Paul's lament. Today, I've really been in 1 Corinthians, and Paul introduces himself in 1 Corinthians in a way that with sight is amazing. And you could hear the pain from Paul. And I'm quite certain that the Creator let Paul know how he was going to be used. And we know that from Peter. Peter is saying, Paul is going to be twisted. He's easily twisted. So they all knew what was going to happen. And imagine that you are Paul and you're a zealot. And Paul is absolutely a zealot. No question about it, he's a zealot. And I honestly probably am too. But imagine that you are Paul for a minute. And that you know they're going to use you and twist what you say to bring destruction upon billions of people. And you could just imagine the crying that goes out from Paul. And that's 1 Corinthians for the first few chapters, why Paul introduces himself. And I just want to kind of go over a couple things because it's such an amazing thing for me as I read this. And in 1 Corinthians 1, in verse 10, he said, I appeal to you, brothers and sisters, in the name of the Lord, that all of you agree with one another in what you say, that there be no divisions among you, that you be perfectly united in mind and thought. And he goes to say, I know that there have been quarrels among you. And in verse 12, what I mean is this. One of you says, I follow Paul. Another, I follow Apollos. And another, I follow Cephas. And still another, I follow Christ. And in 13, he starts answering this. Is Christ divided? Was Paul crucified for you? Were you baptized in the name of Paul? And verse 14 and 15, he says, thankfully, I didn't baptize this many people. That wasn't my calling. 17 says I didn't baptize people because I was to preach the gospel. And then you start getting into the lament that he knows his purpose. Because he says, but to preach the gospel, not with wisdom and eloquence, lest the cross of Christ be emptied of its power. For the message of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved it is the power of God. And you can hear this one where he says, I know that those with sight are okay. And those without, they can't hear. And then in verse 19, for it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, the intelligence of the intelligent I will frustrate. And think about us as we've come to this faith. We read the parables from the Messiah as they prepare the dinner feast. He's not bringing in the top people in society. He's bringing in the bottom. And again, I've always said it since coming to faith. If you had a room of 100 people and you were picking the best ones, I'm either the last or certainly the last 5 in the room. He's not picking the best. He's picking us. And so we don't have that many in our faith that are wise. But that's great because the Creator makes them wise. We don't have many who are wealthy, but that's okay because the Creator will make them. Everything comes from top down. Nothing comes from bottom. I mean, our worship should go bottom up. Our praise should go bottom up. But all gifts come down because the Creator has it all. And Paul goes on to talk about, in chapter 1, in verse 24, 24 is kind of the setup verse. But to those whom God has called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ the power of God and the wisdom of God. For the foolishness of God is wiser than human wisdom, and the weakness of God is stronger than human strength. Verse 26, brothers and sisters, think of what you were when you were called. Not many of you were wise by human standards. Not many of you were influential. Not many of you were of noble birth. But God chose the foolish things of this world to shame the wise. God chose the weak things of this world to shame the strong. God chose the lowly things of this world and the despised things and the things that were not to nullify the things that are, so that no one may boast before him. And again, anything that we have, if we've seen something, it's not because we have anything special. We know it's from sight from the Creator. That's the first and the greatest gift that I've received. I mean, obviously we had life before, but the life we had before was nothing. You know, our life is measured in when He gave us sight. But I wanted to go into the lament of Paul's. And that's really the point of this. Again, he tells us who we are. The Messiah tells us who we are. So we can't be proud and boastful of who we are. We are nothing without the Creator. And, you know, I know in these videos I've continually said, ask for the Creator's heart. You have to ask for these things from Him, because we don't have it. We'll never have what we need to do this walk. We're never going to have naturally what we need to serve Him the way He wants us to serve Him. It's kind of like, okay, I've called you to be my servant. Now I'm going to give you the gifts to allow you to be my servant. Because if I don't, who and what are you? And so, again, the church has preached prosperity doctrine. And I grew up around a church. I had pastors come into my home. And you know, they used to always come in and brag that they got Cadillacs and things like that. And in today's society, we see preachers out there saying, I need a jet plane, I need the biggest house, I need these great luxuries. Let's look at what Paul says about himself and service, the true service for the Creator. In chapter 4 of 1 Corinthians, and he's talking about the others. Already you have you have all you want. Already you have become rich. You have begun to reign. And that, excuse me, without us. How I wish that you really had begun to reign, so that we may also might reign with you. For it seems to me that God has put us apostles on display at the end of the procession, like those condemned to die in the arena. We have been made a spectacle to the whole universe, to angels as well as to human beings. We are fools for Christ, but you are wise in Christ. We are weak, but you are strong. You are honored, we are dishonored. To this very hour we go hungry and thirsty. We are in rags. We are brutally treated. We are homeless. We work hard with our hands. When we are cursed, we bless. When we are persecuted, we endure it. When we are slandered, we answer kindly. We have become the scum of the earth, the garbage of the world, right up to this moment. Show me a church preacher who says this is what service is. But Paul has laid it out. You want to be a leader in this faith? You would look like the scum of the earth, the garbage of the world. It's a lonely service to do it right. And Paul did it right. And imagine the weight of that. But Paul says, I don't even judge myself. The Creator judges me. And he moved forward with what he had. It didn't matter that he was going to be used that way because Paul was a servant. He introduces himself in 1 Corinthians 1 as a servant. And again, you talk about somebody who was just strong and a zealot, that is Paul. The real Paul. Not the Paul that has been twisted to deceive the world. Let's be honest. I can go to any church on Sunday and they preach Paul because they don't want to preach the Messiah. The Messiah would call them a liar. So they twist Paul to say, okay, we're a Paulite. And Paul said, why are you doing this? I didn't die on the cross for you. He knew what was going to go on. What a lament. What a lament. As they scream and preach prosperity, give me your tithe and you'll get tenfold in return. What's Paul saying? My tenfold he got in return was hunger, was thirsty, in rags, brutally treated, were homeless, persecuted, slandered, scum of the earth, garbage of the world. Imagine how well the church would survive if they taught this is what real service is. But Paul did it. And an amazing thing. Because the issue is, Paul knew where the treasures were. He wasn't putting treasures on this earth. He put his treasures above. And Paul is going to be rewarded at an incredible rate. And I know so many of us, when we come to this faith, we're like, whoa, man, Paul, we've got all these teachings. Imagine how much more that is of a blessing for Paul, because he took that on his shoulders, knowing, and said, I'm the servant. You deal, Creator, you deal with me as you will. I am just a tool for you. If that is your desire, then that is your desire, and I am here to do it. He knew they were twisting him. He knew they were going to twist him. And he pleads with you. Church still won't listen to him. But there's such a respect that I have for Paul. For a man who does this, who says, my treasures are heaven. My treasures are on earth, my treasures are heaven.